Welcome to episode 4 of my Incomplete Series Challenge. This is a quarterly challenge I'm running with my patrons. They voted, and even though we've already done a full quarter, we are extending it an additional quarter, which is amazing news for me because I feel like I hit the ground running, but I still didn't get as many books read as I wanted to for the challenge. But starting this episode, I have so far read 13 books towards the challenge, finished or brought up to date 6 series, and the number we are starting with for open series is 58. If you're keeping track, that's the number we started with 3 months ago, but I kept finding books that I had forgotten to include in that initial count. So with 6 series finished, my starting number should have been 64 open series, and it would have been a lot more satisfying to have an accurate count to then tally down from there. But no, it is what it is. It's been incredibly telling to me finding all of those series I had forgotten to include because, look how scattered my reading is. I can't even keep track of everything that I have outstanding, and I've been trying. I have several lists and systems that I've tried to put in place to keep track. I'm not about that anymore. My life, I am trying to simplify everything about my life. And how simple would it be to just have 1 or 2 series going at a time? My ultimate goal is to be under 5, because I am realistic that I'm going to want a little bit of variety. So if I have just one type of book, like an urban fantasy, a sci-fi, a fantasy, just different types of books going at once, I think I can comfortably do that under 5 series. But I have a long way to go. 3 months and I've broken even. But as with any other lofty goal, you just gotta continue making progress one step at a time, and eventually you will get there. It has been very telling to me just how long it has taken me to make what little progress I have so far. No wonder I abandon ship and start new things. It takes forever to get through something. Some of my poor decisions in my face right now. Speaking Bones, I was supposed to read this with my patrons in November, but I was in the middle of reading Rhythm of War by Sanderson to get ready for Wind and Truth, which comes out in about 5 days from now. I am not going to have time to even make any meaningful progress in this book by then. Maybe a little. But I think instead of getting myself behind on everything else that I'm doing, I am going to save this one for the end of the month and hope I have time left over to finish it. Because, it was an official draw from the randomizer, so it is my intention to finish it. It's going to be a tight ask to see if I can get it done this month, but hopefully by the end of January I'll be able to dive into it. It is one I would like to spend a lot of really concerted effort on, meaning I don't want to split my time between it and something else. I want to dive in fully and really appreciate it. It's the final book in a series that I have really loved. So this one is on the docket, but it's kind of on hold for now. But with that being said, I have a buddy read coming up in 4 days. I do have time for a random draw, provided it's an audiobook and it is readily available. Kind of a short one. So I am going to attempt to pick a random one from Gobber. I've got all the series in here on little papers. The pink ones are the best books, the ones that I am super excited to read. Let's hope I pick one of those. And as you go down the color gradient, the closer we get to yellow, the more I really don't want to read it. I might even consider some DNFs, but yeah. Anyway. Okay, what am I going to focus on now? Okay, second to last priority. This one is Drit's book. I think there was a brilliant couple of months where I was actually up to date with Dritz at one point, and then got way behind. The man writes really quickly, 1 or 2 books a year, and I am on book 26 or 7, somewhere in that realm, right in the middle of Neverwinter. Where even are they? These are the 2 books I have left. I have heard that these were written as kind of companions to the video game, essentially. So just deepening the lore there. I can tell, because there's not as much depth to these things going on. The characters, the villains, they all feel meaningless and kind of thin. I love Dritz as a main character, but I also am not really liking the storyline right now. I don't like the direction his life has taken. But I'm continuing to read because I am very interested in some of the newer books that have come out. And Dritz has been an important part of my reading life, and I want to continue honoring that. But these have been kind of a struggle to get through. Hence the fact that it was on kind of a low priority paper, but it does satisfy my criteria. I already own these on audiobook, and I think this one, it's this next one, this Charon's Claw, would be a relatively quick read. So for the sake of the challenge and at least making some progress on my backlist, I'm going to give it a go. The thing about Neverwinter, I am hoping to find a compelling reason to be drawn back to this series again, because it has just been a struggle. I think I pick up one every couple of years at this point, and unfortunately I don't remember any of the villains, so I'm already going to be a little bit disconnected. I just have hope that if I can get through these 2 books, then we start a new chapter with a new trilogy, or quartet as the case may be, and I can kind of get some momentum back. It's got to start somewhere. So, okay, this is the one we are focusing on, at least for the next week or so. I don't know if I'll have a chance to finish it because I have a buddy read starting in about 4 days for A Practical Guide to Conquering the World by K.J. Parker. This is the 3rd and final book in the Siege trilogy, one that I have nothing but high praises for, and this will be capping off the series. And then Wind and Truth comes out on December 6th, because yes, this video series goes live a full 3 months before it goes on the main channel. So Wind and Truth, this is what I would like my entire month to be focused on. So already, by trying to do this, I might be setting myself up for a little bit of failure, but we're going to see. We're going to make progress. We're at least going to crack the spine on this, and then I can revisit it after I'm done reading Wind and Truth, because everything is going to come to a screeching halt. So the next few days, I'll give you some updates on this. Charon's Claw, which I realized I was saying the name wrong. I know exactly why this Neverwinter trilogy has not been working for me. He spends so much time establishing these villains that ultimately don't matter in the whole scheme of things. Like, this is just like a tangent, side, whatever the heck we're doing, and I can't wait until we get back to the main overall trajectory narrative. So, like, the first 25% of this book was all about establishing those new characters, and very little to do with Drizzt. Like, maybe 5% Drizzt, and everything else just being established. And the prologue, I did this one on audiobook, right? The prologue was almost an hour long, and I was listening to it, trying to get back into the series, but kind of bored to tears, and I was doing the thing where I was listening, but I wasn't retaining anything. And I thought, okay, if I keep going down this route, I'm not going to know who they're talking about the rest of the book because I haven't retained any names, and it's going to be, I'm going to feel so disconnected to it that I'm going to DNF the whole thing. And then I will never get back to Drizzt, and that will be unacceptable. So I made myself listen to that first prologue, an hour long, again, and I think it took me 3 hours to get through because I kept having to pause and rewind it. It would have been easier to just physically read. And I'm trying to figure out who all these new people are. And that's the thing I hate about this. Like, you know, you're investing time in figuring out names that aren't going to matter. But it would matter for this specific book, and I didn't want to get disconnected. So I did that. I gave it a good go, and I feel very proud of myself because now that we're further along in the book, I'm about halfway, I actually know about everybody that's going on. I know the inner house politics and dynamics. This one is dealing a little bit with the Drow and the Underdark, which was a nice addition for me because I'm very interested in the Drow and Menzoberranzan in general and the politics there. So at least that's keeping me interested. But had I just continued reading on just for the sake of getting through the book more quickly, I don't think I would have even picked up the nuances of what is going on in Menzoberranzan. So, I don't know. I think so far what I've read, now that I've allowed myself to really enmesh with it, I am enjoying what I'm reading enough that I think I would like to continue on beyond this. But, oh man, I really need the next set of books to be more dynamic with this. Like, I don't know. And the thing is like, there's a companion with Drizzt in this book who I do not like. I do not like anything about this person. I think their attitude, their behaviors, their overall state of being, I'm like, why are we entertaining this? I don't like brats. So it's been a weird read, okay? But at least I'm getting through it. I'm grateful for this challenge because I doubt I would have picked that up otherwise. And had I picked it up, if it hadn't been for the challenge, I think I might have DNF'd after the prologue and thought, I'll come back to this later when I have more patience. Yeah. But I've been balancing it out with Happy Place. There's nothing like going from like Dark Battles with Demons to Happy Place by Emily Henry. You're a contemporary romance author. About halfway through this one, and so far it's been a total delight. I love Emily Henry, and this is the funniest book that I've read from her yet. I've laughed out loud on several occasions, and some of the one-liners will stick with me. Like, they were so good. But I love this author so much that I'm feeling that dread of getting to the end of her published works and not having anything to look forward to. So after this one, I have Funny Place, Funny Story. And the thing, okay, so this is not a series. These books are completely unrelated to each other, but they are of the same ilk, by the same author, I have books that I haven't read yet, so it feels like it should be a series. And I think I am counting it as a series, and I will not be complete until I have read everything published. So this is totally counting towards my tally. Now we take a break from our regularly scheduled programming for an episode of Shelf Help. This is a feature where I take my favorite ideas from productivity books and apply them to my reading life. The book I would like to feature in today's episode is Meditations for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. Now, any fans of my channel know that I love this man's writing. 4,000 Weeks was arguably one of the most life-changing books that I've read. It's like every positive change that I've got going on in my life kind of stemmed from ideas and thoughts that I read in that initial book. But see, that one's more philosophical, whereas Meditations for Mortals is a practical application in like 5 to 7 minute chunks on a daily basis. And the crux of his philosophy is that you are on a finite time scale, whether you like it or not, and you are not going to be able to get to all of the really appealing things that you could be doing with that time. So instead of killing yourself to try to get to it all, you get to a place of acceptance that you're not going to be able to zero out your to-do list, read all of the books, and instead he offers a different strategy on how to still get stuff done, but focus on the most important things, get a lot of meaning out of those, and kind of let the rest go by the wayside. So many good things in this book. I took extensive notes while I was reading it because every idea was like, oh my gosh, that's great. And I started compiling just a couple of my favorites for this post. Just through the introduction, I already had enough material to talk about for 10 minutes. This is one of my favorite quotes. "The more you try to get on top of it all, the more you lose touch with the things that make life worth living." Life can be a series of to-do lists where you are just endlessly checking things off and adding more things, and it's this hamster wheel of a cycle. And as soon as you establish something as like a project or like a to-do, especially something that's supposed to be fun, it immediately becomes more of completing that project and ticking boxes off every day than it does doing the project for the sake of enjoying it in the moment. The obvious reading application of that, the more I try to systemize my reading and plan it out carefully and strategize and turn it into projects like the Incomplete Series Challenge, the more it becomes a chore, the more it becomes, I can't enjoy reading until X. As soon as all of these outstanding series are done, then I can enjoy my time. And it loses touch completely with why I enjoy reading in the first place and why I value it and spend so much time on it on a daily basis. Being a part of the BookTube community and creating content in general comes with a lot of pressure to consume a lot of things and to consume them quickly. And the FOMO aspect, like the fear, the more I'm bombarded every day with the things that I'm not currently reading, it just creates a lot of stress. And the only way I've adapted to that is to just get more anxious about all of the things I'm not reading and push myself to read faster than I feel comfortable doing. And I've been sustaining this breakneck pace for at least the last 5 years. So it's all about balance. I do think paying attention to my Incomplete Series Challenge and recognizing it as a source of additional stress because of all the things hanging over my head, it's overall a positive thing. But I need to make sure chasing getting to zero doesn't get in the way of enjoying my day-to-day experience with the books that I've got going. It seems obvious and it seems like a subtle distinction, but thinking about it in that context is really eye-opening because I love projects, I love checking things off lists, and it can become more about that check mark than it can about the book that you're reading to get that check mark. And speaking of anxiousness, I've noticed that on the days when I'm feeling most anxious about not having a time to read all the things on my to-do list, I still somehow find a few hours to plan out and stress about not having enough time to read. And that brings me to the second idea. There are always going to be way more valuable things to spend your time on than you'll ever be able to get to. And on one hand, that's very depressing. But on the other hand, it's kind of liberating because you can stop stressing about trying to get to zero, about trying to get to the end of your TBR, and instead switch your focus to trying to maximize pleasure in the moment. A really helpful idea he had is to treat your TBR or entertainment backlog, as you will, like a river flowing past rather than as a filling bucket that you will never empty. The river continually streams past with all of these great choices, and you get to continually select choice items from that river. Kind of treat your TBR like a menu and resist the urge to stockpile, because that just creates a whole host of obligatory feelings and a sense of never being fast enough, which, I mean, I'm like the master of stockpiling. I don't know that I can necessarily fix that aspect, but I can definitely look at all of these choices in my massive library as items that I can pick from to serve me in the moment, rather than me being a slave to trying to get through everything in here. I love it. Idea 3, finish things, as finishing things tends to replenish energy. This is perfect for my incomplete series challenge because I am really good at starting new series, but I am not very good at seeing them through. And he had this cool perspective about perfectionists. He says that perfectionists love starting new things, and I can attest this is true. He has a quote, "Finishing things means slogging your way through the messy, imperfect thing that the project became. You get fewer worthwhile things done, and when it gets rough, it's too easy to turn to other options." Yes, 100%. It is always so much more exciting for me to start a new series because it's the unknown. And then once I know what the story is going to be about and got a general feel for it, I seem content to let it sit there for a really long time before coming back to it, because I've satisfied that initial craving to see what it was all about. But recently, because of this challenge alone, I have realized the incredible high I get from actually finishing a story. And not only finishing one, but having read the books relatively back to back enough so that I get the full maximum experience out of each one. I didn't forget minor characters. I didn't forget nuanced things. It really adds to the overall enjoyment of the books that I'm reading. He also talks a lot about closing open loops. The more loops, unfinished projects, unfinished series you have open, the more there is to keep track of, and the more your attention is drawn in all of these different places, and that's kind of what creates the anxiety. So closing the loops is a great way to minimize a lot of the stress that I've been feeling. At least that's how I'm applying it. Idea number 4, which I'm paraphrasing with a quote I heard Tom Colicchio say on Top Chef. Yeah, that's random. "Don't postpone joy." And I touched on this, but I have been operating under the delusion that I can get on top of things with my reading. Like, once I figure this out, then I can sit and enjoy my reading. And what am I taking from this is that it truly, earnestly does not matter how many series I have open. What matters is what I'm choosing to focus on today. And when I'm done with the one thing, what will I be choosing to focus on tomorrow? And I think if I operate under that kind of mentality, the outstanding series problem will fix itself without me having to get into this elaborate checklist system. And the process will look the same, but the difference will be one is loaded with a ton of anxiety and pressure, and the other one is focused on pleasure. So those are my favorite takeaways to apply to my reading life, but almost every single day I found like exceptional value in. I highly recommend this book. It's one of my all-time favorites now. I'm sure I'll go back and read it again and again. So if you're interested in simplifying your life, maybe Berkman can be your guru as well. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Shelf Help. I have some updates for you. And to be totally truthful, I do not remember when my last update was or what I covered in it. I've been going through the whirlwind for content creation, trying to learn a new editing system because Apple went through a new iPhone update and my iMovie, it won't let me pass the permissions screen, and I've done like hours of research to try to fix it. And I'm just like, whatever. So all of this episode that I had previously edited and saved on there is now gone. and I've kind of had to start from scratch. Woe is me. Why does this stuff always happen when things are already super chaotic and busy? It's amazing I have any content going up at all at this point. In any case, a lot of fun things have been happening in my reading world. So first and foremost, I finished Happy Place by Emily Henry. I really didn't think I had time to pick this one up, and truthfully I probably didn't, but I'm so happy that I did, just because it was a nice palate cleanser and refresher between other things that I had going on. This one was written very well as the other ones. The story was not my favorite compared to the rest of them that I have read. And for the longest time throughout this book, there was this one trope that I thought the whole story was going to hang on. That ended up not being the case, but it still gave me stress throughout the whole thing. And I don't particularly like relationship dynamics where the characters don't talk things through. That's been one of the things I've loved about Emily Henry so far, is that the relationships are all mature and they don't get hung up on those stupid things like, well, if they'd only said this, then everything would have worked out. Like, that's really well done. In this case, that's kind of what the story hinged on, and she did it on purpose to kind of build these characters. So I'm not saying it was done poorly or implausible, but man, it was stressful. I did not relate to any of these characters whatsoever. I did not like the main male lead, and the situations all of these people in completely outside of what, I can relate to, which is sad, kinda. But balance that out with the fact that this was easily the funniest Emily Henry that I've read so far. There were so many good liners in there. I laughed out loud a few times, and it just tickled me pink. Haha. I don't remember how I rated other books by this author, but it's just like a half-star notch below that. The last few chapters really did redeem the whole thing for me. And the funny thing, I always talk about how the relationship with the boy is not the most important thing in these stories. It's the relationship with all the other people. And I felt that really strongly in here. Honestly, this one got me to cry, but for the weirdest thing, like the connection between her and her friends is what did it, as opposed to the relationship aspect. And it kind of hit me out of nowhere. I was driving home listening to the audiobook and suddenly I'm tearing up in my car. Like, this is so beautiful. But I wish a little bit more of this story had focused on that friendship. I feel like maybe just 5% more on that would have made the my end experience with it just slightly better. So with the completion of Happy Place, according to my little tracker, it is the 14th book that I've read towards this challenge so far, which I'm really pleased with myself. I may not be finishing a lot of series at a great rate, but I am making concerted efforts, and it still leaves me at 58 open series because I have one left from her that I haven't read. And yes, I am considering this a series because it's an author that I like with kind of similar storylines, and I would like to have read everything by her. It may as well be a series, right? Just an unconnected one. Then I have a couple of current reads. So my random pick, which I am glad that this got picked for random pick because I don't know that I would have continued it of my own accord for a really long time. I really like the scenes with the main character and his companions, but the problem is they are very few and far between. So maybe only 20% of this book are those people. And so those are highlights. Those are 4-star, really love it. I always love the interlude, introspective chapters from Dritz. Those are worth reading an entire book for. But man, one villain after the other and just scenes and endless scenes with them when you feel like it's really ultimately pointless what you're reading. This is so boring. I just can't. And I'm trying to channel my 16-year-old self who read some of these with friends and just absolutely loved every single page. But these ones, let's just face it, I don't think the Neverwinter books are as good. The series, the trilogy right before this one, stellar. And one of my favorite book/trilogy/series enders that I've ever read was in Ghost King. Yeah, Ghost King. Thought it was superb. None of that is in here. So I'm suffering through it. It's got 4-star moments and 2-star moments, so let's round it to a 3. But I can't wait until it's done. I'm getting close. And a challenge is going to have to prompt me to pick up the 4th one. And then hopefully from there it gets good again. There is some cool character development thing with Dritz going on here that I am interested to read on for. And that's kind of the hook that's keeping me coming back. But I definitely will finish that within the next week or so. And then with my patron Dave, I've picked up A Practical Guide to Conquering the World by KJ Parker. This is book 3 and the final one in the Siege trilogy. And I'm reading at a snail's pace because I decided to create more connection with my books, I'm going to be annotating as I go. And just, you know, I haven't gotten stickies yet, but just taking notes and stuff. Anything that strikes me as profound, I sit down and I write it in my book journal and just get like a little more enmeshed with what I'm thinking, like let those thoughts play out a little bit. It's the only way I can think of to stop stressing about what I'm not reading and have a real moment with what I'm currently reading. And I have Tori Talks Books to thank for that, because her post on how content creation and booktube wrecked her enjoyment of reading sung to me on every level. And I had been working on trying to figure out how to find that balance for myself for a couple years now. If y'all have been following me, you know I'm all about trying to find that process that makes reading more fun. And I was so close, but I still couldn't figure out how to get over that hump of how do I not sit there and constantly think about what I should be reading next and just enjoy my moment with the book I'm on. So I'm annotating. I've been doing it for about a week, and so far it doesn't feel like homework. So far it hasn't been a burden to feel like I've got to do more things to read a book. I've really enjoyed how much it's allowed me to slow down and really enmesh with these titles. The only thing is like, I mean, I've been reading this for 5 nights and I'm only on page 50. So this really slow. I don't know. There's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere. But right now it's working for me. In any case, right out of the gate, I like this one a lot more than the second one. And there's so many things in here that I just think are so funny and very well done and creative writing. And then there's this draw to keep reading. There's a couple of unknowns in here that I can't wait to figure out the things that I don't know. I have so many questions. I love that draw back to the book. So this has been my before bed read. And every time I sit down, it's like way too late. I should have been asleep an hour ago, but I'm like, I just got to keep going because it's really good. And then finally, it's here. Wind and Truth came out. I'm not very far along in this one, but this has been front loaded. So many cool things have happened and I just can't wait. I can't wait to keep reading. So I'm also taking my time with this sucker, and so far it's going very well. My goal is to have it read by the end of the month, but I mean, we're getting closer and closer. It's about the 15th, so at 2 weeks, there's no way. I finished my random draw read of a Legend of Drizzt book. It's called Karen's Claw, not Sharon's Claw. Thank you to the audiobook. I know the difference. This book, I kind of hated it. I appreciated it for a few of the plot advancing things it did as far as the main character is concerned. And there's a secondary character who I've always really liked, who I also appreciated that advancement. But, oh, man, all of this good stuff, like the 20% that's really good in this, could have been compacted down into a single book, I think, instead of a 4-book series. Because then you wouldn't have to have all the mess of all of those extra characters, all of the extra villains that are going to be ending up pointless anyway. Like, it all doesn't matter. I am not enjoying this one very much at all. And so if we had just compacted it down to just the amazing plot advancing things that are going on with the main character, perfect. Like, that would have been an amazing, like, if you take 20% out of each one, that's 80% of a really good book, and then you have 20% left over for villain creation and adding depth there. That's a great book to me. But instead, we are forced to slog out through 4 books, which may have taken me about 5 years total to get to this point, just because I just can't. So the final book, The Last Threshold, I'm hoping it gets better from there, but another random draw, some sort of challenge, is going to have to get me to pick that one up, because I don't think I'm going to do it of my own accord. At least not right now. I'm a little burnt out on it. But then part of me is like, if you ever want to get through this, you just need to rip the Band-Aid off and do it. And so I have considered, since I'm still acclimated in this world, just picking up the next book. In fact, let me go get it. One of the coolest covers of the series so far. Maybe that's a strategy I should do, because I have been struggling not to pick another random draw because I'm in the middle of a couple of other things. But I need a book that I can listen to before bed, like as I fall asleep, and then like maybe in the car when I don't need to concentrate quite as hard. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll just, even though I just got through half of a video ranting about this series and talking about how much I hate it so far, why is the solution to continue reading in it? Well, because I'm heavily invested in Drizzt's world. And I want to know what happens with the character ultimately. There are so many books beyond this point, and they can't all be as disappointing as this one has been for me. I might do it I already own it on audiobook, and then I won't have to wait for a challenge. I can just cross this one off as a sub-series read. I am counting the whole Drizzt saga as one big series, so I wouldn't be marking off a series per se, but I would at least be completing a subset and hopefully able to move on to something better. I might do that. I need to think about it for a bit. But, ultimately, 4-star Drizzt moments, 1 to 2-star everything else. I just didn't care. So, 2.5 stars? No, it's not that good. 2 stars. This book gets a 2 stars. The lowest Drizzt book I have rated so far. It occurred to me after I finished filming that I spent all of that time early on in the Drizzt book trying to get acclimated with all of those villains and the names of the characters, and it took me forever to remember everybody. So if I put the series down now and don't touch it for several months, years even, I'm going to have to go through all of that effort again. So I think that solidified my decision to have this be kind of my backup book. It's not the one I'm focused on, but when I need a break from the kind of a denser read that I have going, I'm going to take a break with this one. And it'll be like how much percentage much easier to read it now than it will be in the future when I have forgotten everything. So, yep, that's what we're doing. I am reading A Practical Guide to Conquering the World by KJ Parker, and I'm approaching the halfway point and only just now figuring out how this ties into the first 3 books. I was worried for a while that it wouldn't, and I should have more faith in the author at this point because everything that he does feels really intentional, and the writing style, it is so cool in this series. If I ever get back to writing, I'm definitely going to use this as a case study for how to do certain things because I just love it. The main character in this one, I'm enjoying following the story. There's been a couple of, there's a library, and I liked those scenes. And he always gives his characters kind of a unusual skill, and it's been fun to watch the skill of this particular character. Anytime someone gets to showcase what they're good at is great. The humor in this one has been fun so far. There's a particular dynamic between the 2 main characters that just makes me laugh. I'm not sure yet how this compares to the first 2 books. I definitely don't like it as much as the first, but we'll see where it goes before I officially declare which is best of the remaining 2. But hopefully this won't be the last thing I read by this author because I'm enjoying him thoroughly. The writing is just so clever, and the dry humor goes a long way with me every time. And I am reading this one particularly carefully. I'm doing a tandem read with audio and physical. I'm experimenting with annotating, and mostly I just have a notebook where I'm jotting down notes and thoughts as I read, and kind of helps me ground myself with the book a little more. And all of this is prompted from a strong desire to slow down with the books that I'm reading, because that's the only part of the equation I haven't quite figured out yet. I love that I am focusing on only a couple of series at a time, but I still have that urge while I'm reading one thing to hurry up and pick up something else. It's about the completion as opposed to the enjoyment of the thing. So that is what I'm doing. But it's also meaning that reading is taking me a lot longer than usual. I probably would have finished this book already, but I'm annotating it. I'm reading it slowly. Same thing with Wind and Truth. I've been reading this sucker for 2 weeks now, and I'm not even a quarter of the way through it. And it's been a really strong introduction. So many things right out of the gate that I thought were amazing. And then it's kind of slowed down a little bit, and we've gotten some introspection, some discussions, some plan making. It's gonna go somewhere great. I'm enjoying the ride so far, but at this rate, I've got 10 days left in the month, and I definitely will not finish this by the end of this particular episode. So we will be continuing on into the next month, wrapping this one. I don't even know if I'll finish it next month. I don't know. But so far, worth the anticipation, and I'm just eating up every word. Final update for you. It's been a really long month. More so than I can capture in half a dozen updates or whatever. But I feel like things are taking me absolutely forever to read, which is good. I'm trying this new experiment of slowing down with the books I read, and I think it's paying off. I feel like I had a real moment with the ones that I've chosen. But as a result, I got through fewer of them. But I am ending the month having completed A Practical Guide to Conquering the World. This is book 3 and the final book in the Siege trilogy. And I am so tickled with this series as a whole. The first book was the strongest one, but this one, like, even though it wasn't quite as on par, the thing as a whole really sold it to me. There's so many subtle tiebacks to what happened in the first two books in here, and I felt like the author brought it home in a satisfying way. It's just so clever, and I cannot tell if the writing is so intelligently done that it's just that dialed in, or if he's just incredibly good at problem solving and inputting things after the fact that look like they were meant to be there the whole time intentionally. And maybe a combination of both, I don't know. But I am definitely going to be studying this series and this author in my own writings at some point, because there were a lot of things in here that I thought were brilliant. There are certain times when I'm writing where I can't figure out how to go back and integrate something in, like a new idea or whatever, but he had such a good way of weaving this story together that, oh man, I can't even begin to tell you. And then it was funny on top of it. I love the dialogue. I love their overall concept for the story. And for this book in particular, I'm probably landing at a 4 out of 5 stars, but it's like a solid 4. And the series as a whole, maybe a 4.5. I love the first book. So this, having completed it, it is my 16th book read towards the challenge since it started. And it brings me down to 57 outstanding series. I'm finally starting to gain some traction. I love it. And most shockingly, this book has been great so far. It's been like 75% main character Dritz and 25% all the other crap, which is exactly the balance you want when you pick up a Dritz book. I don't know what happened in the last one, but I'm already approaching, like, I'm past the 30% mark of this sucker. And I'm loving it. Instead of feeling like I'm forced to read it and just going through the motions whenever I have a moment, I find myself seeking it out to see what happens next. And that is precisely the type of attitude you want to have when you're reading a book. No kidding. I'm really glad that I kept going right away. And I also kind of came up with a game plan for how to treat this series going forward. So I am going to do what I've done with some of the other bigger authors like Mercedes Lackey, Anne McCaffrey, those authors that are so prolific, but they tend to write in sets. I am going to consider finishing this Neverwinter group of 4 books as one complete series, so I can check it off and consider it officially done. Then there's one standalone book that's actually a part of a 6-book tangent series, but I'm only going to read the one by Salvatore. It's called The Companions. And then there are 4 sets of trilogies that I have not read yet. Each time I go to pick up one of those trilogies, I'm going to treat that as a set within itself. That's a series that I am starting and then finishing, hopefully within a reasonable time frame. So once I complete this, hopefully in the next episode, I get to check it off my list. And then once I get more of a handle on all of this stuff I've got going on, then I can look to starting the next chapter in the Dritz world. I love it. I'm all fired up about it. I've really enjoyed this one so far. There was a couple of scenes in there that were a little bit too drawn out. The battle scenes, ironically, which Salvatore is exceptional at, but there's only so many things you can do to keep it interesting. And but generally they're pretty good. I like the character compositions in here, and it's starting to feel more like what I signed up for. So I'm very excited about that. And then since my last update, I really have not touched Wind and Truth. I'm not even 20% through this thing yet. It's great. I'm enjoying it, but I needed a break, kind of split it up and do other things in between. I just finished Practical Guide to Conquering the World, so that frees me up to continue on with this one. And then with my patrons, I am just barely starting Starter Villain, which will not count towards my series, but honestly, I'm considering anything by John Scalzi that I haven't read kind of a series, because it's all by the same author and I would like to have read everything by him, but it's not going on the official count. But so far, just as funny as everything else that I've read by him, really good. And so that wraps it up. I am so pleased with my progress on this. I've not started anything new throughout this entire challenge, other than the Priory one that I had already had planned, and I can just feel the momentum shift. Like, look, I got some blank spaces going on back here. I've been able to shift things around and unsquish them. And I'm really looking forward to the next couple of months and rounding this out, because I think we have 2 more months before we pick another challenge. So thank you so much for joining with me along on this journey. Let me know if you're running a similar type of challenge. Link to my Patreon is in the description, and I hope to catch you on my next one. Bye.